I be coming from a place where you better pray. I seen evil all my life, pray for better days. Better get yourself together, life is not a game.
Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to the Viney Babs Show. Okay, y'all, I've just been having all types of revelations lately. But like today, I want to talk about my personal spiritual beliefs. Like, people been asking me for years, like, what do you believe in? What do you practice? What do you da 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 da? Like, you know, I believe in a lot of things. I believe in pretty much everything and nothing at the same time. But let me explain this to y'all. Quit playing around. But yeah, so this video is basically going to be about Omnism. I believe that's how you say it. I came across this word years ago on Facebook. I came across it, and the definition is pretty much, my personal belief is somebody who believes in all religions but doesn't practice one exclusively. So Google says Omnism is the respect of or belief in all religions with their gods or lack thereof. Those who hold this belief are called omnists, sometimes written as omniist. The definition of an omniist or omnist, whatever, however, which one you want to say it, Google says you can say both. So hey, don't be trying to correct me. But omniist, a person who does not claim any one religion, practice, or belief, but finds truth in them all. Okay, that's me. So traditionally, I grew up in a Christian household. Like, that's my traditional, what I was raised in. Like, I grew up going to church often, basically Baptist church or whatever. Like, and that's another thing. Like, when I was young, I didn't realize, like, there's all these subdivisions of Christianity. Like, it's just crazy. Like, you got all these different divisions. I want to talk about why I believe in, like, I like to identify as an omniist instead of, like, a Christian or a Muslim or a person who practices voodoo, any of that. But I believe in all of these. Like, but I'm gonna tell you which parts I agree with, which parts I don't. This may be a long video. I started trying to write it down, like, so I can get all my thoughts out clearly. But I ended up writing, and I'm like, you know what? I have the urge to get this video out right now, so I'm about to do this video now. Like, I want to say what I wrote and try to organize it as much as possible, but the rest is going to just come from my head because I don't got time. So, alright. First, what I want to get into, so like I said, I grew up traditionally, like, as a Christian, right? Going to church, hearing the pastor speak about the Bible, all that stuff, right? So here's the thing too, like, when you get into spirituality, a lot of people think you, like, a lot of people start demonizing Christianity. I don't like to use that word because Christians demonize a lot of stuff, like damn near everything. Like, so basically, growing up Christian, there's a lot of things that didn't make sense to me about the Bible and how we were taught. Like, I feel like a lot of Christians, self-proclaimed Christians that I grew up around, whether it be family members, whether it be church members, like, that I didn't know all like that but were around, whether it just be people on the internet I come across, like, a lot of self-proclaimed Christians are very hypocritical. I'm not about to sit here and be cliche, because that's the reason why a lot of people will just be like, I'm not Christian. How are you going to let somebody else shake your faith? If you believe in that, then that's what you believe. Like, nobody else should steer you away. Now, with that being said, here's why I believe in Christianity, but I don't at the same time. The devil's job is to divide and conquer, right? Anything that has you divided and conquered is keeping you from reaching your true potential. Anything that's making you judge other people and their faith and how they believe is pretty much blocking you from your true potential. You're so worried about trying to fix somebody else and what they believe. You're not focusing on your self daily. You're not showing up and being your best self daily. You're trying to push this religion on other people that you're not even practicing what you say fully, right? this ain't just Christians, there's a lot of people in different religions, so we're going to talk about that. One thing that throws me off about identifying as a Christian, a lot of Christians, I feel like the majority of Christians are very narcissistic. Not all, because I came across some great people who are Christians and practice their faith and stuff like that. But the majority of them are very, really hypocrites, and narcissists. Like I said, growing up in the church, I really didn't learn much about Christianity. I learned much about people's personal agendas and what verses they're going to use to push their own agenda.
Look, Lucille, I'm sorry. I lost my way. I want to make it up to you.
Yeah, that can happen.
The Bible says love is patient, love is kind. Love does not keep record of wrongdoings.
Well, I do.
When I started learning about Black history and stuff like that, you go watch the Hidden Color movies. The slave masters used to use there's a verse in the Bible that talks about how you should obey your earthly master. The slave masters used to have certain slaves, the ones that they allowed to be preachers, they preached that onto the other slaves. Like Nat Turner. There's a reason why Nat Turner revolted, and that's a whole nother thing. But anyway, the slave masters would pretty much make them use whatever passages that they wanted to pretty much push onto the other slaves, because they knew that they couldn't read, and they take advantage of that. Let's be honest, the majority of people do not read the Bible. Like me personally, I'm gonna keep it real. To this day, I haven't really picked up an adult Bible and read a Bible. Like when I was a kid, my mom bought me a children's Bible. I read that Bible cover to cover because I was a kid and the pictures interest me. But I did read it cover to cover, and I'm a bookworm. I'm a Virgo, so I love reading. Always have. I used to lock myself away in the room with books. Anyway, over the years, I've been to different youth churches with my friends. I moved around a lot. I went to a lot of different schools. So I've been to a lot of different churches, and I had different friends who would invite me to yeah, come to my youth church. And so I would go to the youth church with them after school, or I would go to Sunday service with them sometimes on Sundays. So I would just hear certain verses and stuff, and certain ones that I feel like the ones that was supposed to stick with me. And I even got on here on YouTube, and there's people up here that be preaching and talking about it and stuff like that. I feel like the verses that stuck with me. And also, a lot of narcissistic parents will say, the Bible says, don't disrespect your parents and stuff like that, but they'll purposely leave out the part that says don't provoke your children. People will use whatever Bible verses they want, you know what I mean, to fulfill their, to manipulate people and fulfill their personal agenda at the moment. So there's a lot of cults within Christianity. There's a lot of pastors that's able to get over on people, and because people are more so putting their faith in that person, that they know the word of God better than them and things like that. That's another thing that keeps me from identifying as a Christian. A lot of people act like the Bible was handwritten by God himself, and that's another thing. God is the energy, not a him, or that's another white supremacist tactic, you know what I mean, calling the energy of God a him. And that's another oppressive, I don't believe in God being a man or a woman. I believe he's both, and I'm gonna still say he, because it's still what I grew up saying. It's kind of rooted into me, but my inside, I understand that God is an energy, there's different names. The creator, the vortex, the most high, there's all these different names, right? Just know, when I say any of those, I'm referring to that energy that has exploded from the universe and created all this life, created all these different races, created all these different species of animals and aliens and different things that we don't even know. But anyway, yes, when I say God, I'm referring to the energy from the Big Bang that created, that literally came out of nothing and created all this different life and everything that we know today, right? Like I was saying, it can be rooted in a lot of narcissism, and literally the way the world is today is because of everybody being forced to convert to Christianity. All right, cool, that's cool if you did it on your own willingly, but if you were forced and your ancestors were forced, you can't tell nobody that they gotta believe in that. Another thing is, people act like The Most High, energy handwrote the Bible himself or itself. You know what I mean? And then that's not what happened. Like, the Bible was originally written in Latin, right? I believe it was Latin, but it was written by a whole bunch of witnesses and prophets. It wasn't even written by Jesus, y'all. It wasn't even written by Jesus, and it wasn't even written by Jesus. We gonna call, just for this part of this video, I'm gonna call him Jesus. For the rest, I'm gonna call him Yeshua, because that's what I believe him as. But yeah, he ain't read the Bible neither. Like, people who was like alive before he was born, after he was born. Like, there's the New Testament and there's the Old Testament. New Testament is before Jesus was even born. Jesus was a Jew, right? Yeshua was a Jew. Wasn't a Christian. Wasn't even out here pushing, that there was a religion called Christianity. Like, just pushing his own personal beliefs, like, to change, basically, the world at the time. People act like it was handwritten by the Most High itself, and it wasn't. It was a whole bunch of prophets. And like other people, that's not to invalidate their experience, because I have learned a lot from the Bible and the stories of the Bible. I feel like, the Bible is pretty much a historical book, right? It's a whole bunch of people who lived like thousands of years ago, who wrote about events, historical events, current events at their time, right? That was their current events. To us, since it's thousands of years later, it's that, or like history. But basically, they was writing what they was going through at the time, and their revelations, and what was happening. They was writing how God was working for them through their life. Like how people still get on there and like get on YouTube today and say their testimonies. They had to write their stories on paper. So I feel like there's a whole bunch of autobiographies and biographies in a book. That's why some books are missing. Like, the church just took whatever books they wanted, which ones they, when they were putting Christianity together. So, like I was saying, Yeshua, Jesus, whatever y'all wanted to call him, he was a Jew. We have the Old Testament, which was before his birth. Then we have the New Testament, which was after his birth. Jews basically believe in the Old Testament. Christians basically follow the New Testament, right? Alright, like I was saying, the devil's job is to divide or conquer. I feel like if anybody's religion was completely right, like, you would be loving people. You're supposed to, well, that's what that's what a lot of these religions teach, but let's keep it real. The people who practice them don't really practice what they preach. So everything should be about love and unity, no matter what the next person believes. Like, however you decided to get to God, however you decided to build your relationship with God, you should not force that on other people, because other people don't have your background, other people don't have your experiences, other people don't have your beliefs. The stories that personally stuck with me from the Bible, that I take with me, I don't know word from word. I can't quote to y'all no exact verses, no exact passages, nothing like that, no exact books. But I can tell you like certain stories that stuck with me. Like, there's a story about the king, right? The king basically had a dream. When he woke up, he could not remember his dream, right? The king got a whole bunch of wise men around him. These wise men, their job is to know more than the king does. So basically, he goes to the wise men, what was my dream about? They're like, we don't know. He's like, okay, well, since y'all don't know, I'm going to get y'all executed, because why don't y'all know? Y'all job is to be smarter than me and wiser than me. So basically, one of the wise men, David, pleaded with the king to he said, give us some time. I'm going to pray and basically ask for the dream that you had, and I'm going to reveal it to you. So basically, he prays, he had a dream, and he has the same exact dream that the king had. That's a whole nother story right there, but like, what I took away from that story, like, dreams are very powerful, dreams are very real. The dream world is the real world, period. Like, I got a video on here of that. I'll put it right here. And then another one that stuck with me was like Moses going to Pharaoh. He went with his powers that he got from God, and basically he was showing Pharaoh that he can do all this stuff. And then Pharaoh was like, oh, but my guys can do that too. Like, alright, that's a whole other, like, when I was learning about like voodoo, hoodoo, all that, like, all them religions, that stuck with me, because it pretty much taught me, like, you can do a lot of the same things that people do, like, through the power of God. I say this to say, I came across tarot, like, completely back. Like, I was going through something like a spiritual awakening in my life, right? I'm gonna get to more how I came across tarot in a little bit. This has literally link me to my ancestors. Like, I have my own personal relationship with my ancestors, with God. Like, you know, I'll just talk about it down the line. My point of saying people only use what verses they want from the Bible and stuff like that, and don't really teach the whole religion. Like, when you're in Christian, like when you're a Christian, I never got a full understanding of the Bible from being a Christian. I got it from actually going off and trying to understand other religions. When I got into that's when I started learning about the archangels, right? Archangel Michael, Archangel Gabriel, Archangel Uriel, Archangel Raphael. There's a lot more, right? But basically, these are gods. Like, these are the angels that are right up under God, right? Now, when we learn all about the devil. We learn all about demons and angels and stuff in Christianity, but you never learn the names and stuff like that. Like, you really more so learn about the sins and what not to do and stuff like that. You don't really learn what to do. Talk terror is something that is deemed very, from not just Christians, but the Hebrew Israelites as well. They deem terror like evil and all that. But yeah, I never heard of these angels, right? But these angels, when I came across them in terror, I feel like they helped me heal a lot of my issues, like, you know, trauma and stuff like that. And they're still helping me. They walk with me. I learned that Archangel Michael is one of my guardian angels and one of my guides, right? One of my spirit guides. Archangel Michael is like one of God's, like, basically highest commanders, basically. Like, say this to say, when I started studying like Islam, I had a friend, right? He is a Muslim. Like, he's one of them, like, I don't know what he really is. Like, he said he's a Muslim, but I don't know, like I said. But anyway, I still learned a lot from him. Like, don't pay attention to the messenger, pay attention to the message, right? So he told me Archangel Gabriel delivered the word to Muhammad, and that's what started Islam, right? And I'm like, wow, I know about Archangel Gabriel. Like, he's the Archangel of love. But I learned about him through tarot. Like, he was like trying to tell me, like, why I should be a Muslim, why I shouldn't be like practicing tarot, everything I do is evil, why I shouldn't be trying to talk to my ancestors, all that stuff, right? But that's what's helping me. And I'm like, that's crazy you said that, because I never would have heard of Gabriel unless I ever came across tarot, because I didn't learn about them in Christianity. So anyway, in Judaism, you know, Islam and Christianity, they talk about all of these angels, right? All three of these religions are so tied in. Like, I don't understand why they be beefing. Like, I don't understand why the Crusades ever happened. Like, you know, the wars that I believe it lasted like hundreds of years. The wars over religions between Islam and Christianity that lasted for hundreds of years. Like, why did that even happen? If y'all religions is all about love and unity and stuff like that. Like, if y'all religions is the right way. Like, if y'all are really connected and tapped into God like that, y'all should be loving and stuff like that. Y'all shouldn't be killing. I feel like I should have learned about archangels in Christianity. I never not once heard of any of these names, and that's another thing that turned me off for like, I learned more about getting to like them from learning about you know, from tarot readings and by accident, because I didn't even know it was tarot when I came across it. I was like, oh, card reading. Like, I feel like it's important to know about these angels, because you need to know what all they do, what do they fight in your life, how are they here to help you and advance your life. Because in Christianity, I just hear don't have sex, don't have kids out of wedlock, don't blah, 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 blah. But you never hear what to do. So therefore, you are going to make those mistakes because you're so worried about what not to do that you're going to do it, if that makes sense. I don't know. I'm explaining that in a different video one day. The one ultimate thing though that steered me like away from Christianity and made me like, none of this makes sense. Like, this is what the Christians believe. God is like, alright, God, Jesus is God, right? This never made no sense to me. How is God Jesus? And they're the same people, but at the same time, God sent Jesus to earth, right? To be born through Mary, who's supposed to be a virgin, yet somehow she's a sex worker and she's with George, and he was conceived through an immaculate conception somehow, right? But he's God's only son that he sent here to this earth to die for our sins and be washed away. Like, that don't make no damn sense. Like, how are they the same person at the same time? How are you? It just didn't make no sense. Like, period. So that always turned me off, and that always left me questioning things. Like, one thing people would say is like, oh, it's the Trinity, but they never explained it. They would just say it's three, it's the Holy, it's the Father, the Son, and the Spirit. And coming across spirituality, I understand that more than I ever did ever being a Christian. That didn't make no sense to me. So that always left me with questions. Like, before I understand it more like spiritually than I do than I did as a Christian. I have friends over here, like, we talk about religious stuff, spiritual stuff, all that, like, you know what I mean? So I always ask questions and always want to know more. So when I started looking into like Islam, right? Cause that's something that has always been around for me. Like, I always knew about the Nation of Islam. Growing up, I thought that was for black people. I thought that was like, that's another thing with Islam, that's what threw me off. I feel like it's too divided. Like, you got the Nation of Islam, then you got, I guess just Islam. Like, you feel me? So, like, my friend I was just telling y'all about earlier, like, I would ask him, like, oh, so are you Nation of Islam or are you just a Muslim? He's like, I'm a Muslim. Like, I go to the regular, like, he's not Nation of Islam. Okay, so I guess he's just a black Muslim. I feel like there's a lot of great leaders that came out of the Nation of Islam. Christianity, Islam, and Judaism have a lot of the same beliefs. So I don't understand why they be beefing. But let's get into that right now. I believe a lot of Islam, whether they be regular, you know, it don't matter which one you are a part of, the nation or like just Islam. I believe a lot of them do like take their faith seriously, right? Some of them don't, cause like I said, like there be some that just like walk around like, oh, I don't eat pork, and you feel me? But I want 30 wives though, like, you feel me? But they don't do nothing else. That's all they know. Like, they're sure allowed to have multiple wives. I don't know if the nation do that, because I don't think the nation do that. But I know that regular Islam, like in other countries, because we're still in America, you cannot have multiple wives in America, no matter what you're talking about. Like, it's still a legal contract at the end of the day. Like, now at this point it's government. Like, you mean, it's not religious no more, like, to be married. Like, it's a government contract. Like, and it can still be very beneficial. Like, marriage is another topic I'm gonna talk about another time. But right now we're talking about Islam and their marriage or whatever. Like, so a lot of people like throw me off because they'll only like be a Muslim for that. And those are the ones I don't like to talk to for real, because like you ain't really tapped in with God. Like, you ain't really tapped in with the Most High, the energy that I'm connected with. Like, you feel me? So the ones I feel like practice their faith, like I could talk to them, because the ones that be praying 7 times a day really on that mat, like praying, tapping into themselves, like spending time connecting with themselves. I feel like a lot of Muslims do actually practice their faith. Like, they're strong with, you know, actually doing the things that, you know, is set in stone that they're supposed to do, right? Praying toward Mecca, like things like that, praying 7 times a day. Like, not all of them, don't get me wrong, they probably slack some here and there, but like, I feel like they take that real serious. Like, you feel me? And I like that, because that means you're really spending time with yourself, tapping in to what you believe in. I think they got a lot of the right ideas. I feel like the main thing that's different from them than what they believe in from Christians is that they believe Jesus or Yeshua was a prophet and not the Lord and Savior, right? Christians believe he was and I agree with that. I feel like that's correct. Like, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but that's my belief. Like, I believe that. Like, you feel me? And the Hebrew Israelites actually identify, and Judaism, like, they identify with that too. Like, we're going to get into their section in a minute. They're next. They're coming up next. But anyway, with the Nation of Islam and just Islam, like, that's what they believe, right? And I believe that is correct. So even though I agree with pretty much a lot of the things that the Nation of Islam says and like Islam believes, they're still divided. I never really understood why they were like two different entities, and I don't understand that. You know what I mean? Just like, you know, Christianity got all these different subdivisions. I thought that was crazy. But I kind of do understand too at the same time, because the Nation of Islam is also about advancing the black race politically. You know what I mean? And I feel like the Islam religion has kind of been a part of our oppression, if that makes sense. That might be a reason why the Crusades happened. You know what I mean? Like, I know the Nation of Islam don't got nothing to do with the Crusades, because they wasn't established until like the 1930s. I mean, I don't know. Was it the 1930s? I think it was. But I know they was established sometimes in the 1900s. So anyway, you know, the Islam been around for it came up like as a whole came up, like, you know, when Christianity was pretty much I believe it was Judaism, then Christianity, then Islam. Like I was saying, I love the Nation of Islam. Like a lot of great people that came out of the Nation of Islam. Well, that I like, you know what I mean. That I like a lot of their ideologies and stuff like that. Malcolm X, Minister Louis Farrakhan, Brother Ben X, Rizza Islam, and 19 Keys. These are some of my favorite people that came out of the Nation of Islam that are like political leaders and that like did things to advance, like, you know, the black race and or currently doing things, because a lot of these people are still alive. Only one that really is dead that I mentioned is Malcolm X. But yeah, so Malcolm with his beliefs and stuff, like when he took his pilgrimage to Mecca, he became like a different person. He started pretty much mixing his ideas to like include other races of people, not just black people. And that's a good thing, because a lot of different races are actually helpful in our advancement. When I was studying Frederick Douglass, a lot of white abolitionists or who helps him pretty much tell his story and help him lead to, you know, be able to be in a position to help free the slaves. As far as Malcolm X goes, I feel like a reason why, you know, they wanted him dead, because when he started having these realizations that he could advance, like when you team up with different races, like you could advance just the betterment of the human race as a whole, like, you know what I mean, it became a problem. I feel like that's what the Nation of Islam, a lot of them was doing today, because I learned a lot from Rizza Islam about a lot of stuff. Let's move on to Judaism and the Hebrew Israelites. Both are religions, like more of like, where the Nation of Islam is an organization, like the Hebrew Israelites ain't really an organization. Like you don't got chapters set up around, like that I know of at least. There's no chapter set up around, like, you know, the country and stuff like that. I remember hearing about the Nation of Islam when I was a kid. I'm more so just hearing about Hebrew Israelites as I'm a grown, like as I'm an adult. I'm gonna tell you how I came across hearing about it. When I was young, I always used to wonder, why are there no black Jews? I didn't know that there was black Jews. Like I thought that black people weren't allowed to be Jews. Like I really did genuinely believe that. When I learned about the Hebrew Israelites, I was about 19, 20 years old, one of the two. I was 20, I think. So my brother, I learned from my brother actually. So my brother, the job he was working at the time, right? He told me, this is how the universe works. Like, this is how the Most High in the universe works. There's this man that used to come in his job every day and tell him like, oh, watch these movies on YouTube. Watch these documentaries. They were called Whited Out. And he would also tell him, we'll watch some of Pastor Stephen Darby's videos, right? And he would never do it. And he would come in he would come in pretty much every day or often, very often, and do it, right? So then, basically this man, like the day he decided to finally watch these videos, he never seen this man again. Like he stopped seeing this man. I walked in with him and his friend, walked in his room. They was watching these videos, and I sat down and watched with them, and I got real interested. So I went home and started watching them myself, like Stephen Darby, and I watched all the Whited Out documentaries, and it led me down the loophole of like, you know, why slavery even happened and like what was going on and like it broke down the Bible even more for me than I ever understood as a Christian. That's why I like the Hebrew Israelites, because I feel like I learned so much from them. What I don't like about them is they're judgmental too. Like you could get on YouTube and literally see them arguing, see them attacking other people for their beliefs and stuff like that. Matter of fact, I've been attacked by some Hebrew Israelites myself. That's why I pretty much can't identify as being a Hebrew Israelite, because I believe in the power of crystals. I believe in like my ancestors, stuff like that. They look at me like I'm practicing necromancy, like I'm practicing sorcery, because I believe in crystals. Like I believe in the metaphysical properties of crystals and the scientific, like, you know, how they're used. Like I understand metaphysics, the science of metaphysics, so they feel like I'm sinning and I'm doing all this, you know, not following the commandments of the Most High. Like Hebrew Israelites teach that we were in Jerusalem. Like, you know, there was a group of black people in Jerusalem, and they were pretty much driven out by the Khazarians, and the Khazarians is like a Roman Empire that pretty much took over Judaism and converted to Judaism, and they are now like the pale skinned people that we see today practicing Judaism. Like, so because like basically they were invaded by the Khazarians and had to leave their homeland, I don't know if it's just the Khazarians. Let's just say the Romans, right? They were invaded by Rome and had to leave, the Romans, and had to leave their homeland, right? One thing that I really learned from studying the Hebrew Israelites that woke me up was there's all these black Jewish cultures around the world that pretty much have never, like, they always practice Judaism for thousands of years. They never like stopped. So they're direct. This is scientifically proven. They're direct descendants from Abraham, right? And they're meant to be preachers. They're also direct descendants from the bloodline of Yeshua, Jesus, like whichever one you want to say. I personally believe I'm a descendant of that. Like, you know what I mean? Personally believe I'm a descendant of that bloodline. Like, so therefore, I believe in that too. Like, so I believe, so far, y'all, we got 3 religions that I can identify with, but I could also be like, all right, y'all got some divide and conquer energy going on that I don't like. Like, you feel me? So I'm going to insert this clip because I want y'all to see the black tribes and stuff. Like, yeah, I'm going to insert that clip.
But then, researchers, they noticed that there's just a lot of things that the Lemba are doing, unlike other tribes around them, that really resembled the law of Moses and other customs, traditions of the Jewish people. So they sent a team of people down there to research them. And one of the people that went was Dr. David Goldstein from Duke, who was a professor. And they did DNA testing on them and showed that 10% or so of the tribe had the Cohen Y chromosome genetic marker, which would mean that these people have a population that comes from the descendants of Aaron, the brother of Moses, who was the first of the priestly class. So that was already shocking.
Another thing I want to throw in here while we're still talking about these 3 religions, the letter J was not invented until the 1600s. The time where Christianity started to, when they started to take over the world and send missionaries everywhere to conquer, literally divide and conquer, and start bringing in the start up the slave trade and create the world that we know today. That was all around the 1600s when all of this was orchestrated. Like, maybe even before that. Like, a couple years, 100 years before that. Like, I believe this plan is so devious and so crazy, and it works so well. I believe it was like hundreds of years in the making, like hundreds, like generation after generation. Like, I feel like the fact that it's scientifically proven that this group of black Jews, black Hebrews, they are like descendants of Abraham and Yeshua. I think that since it's scientifically proven, you cannot literally argue with the Hebrew like ideology. But a lot of them still, like, as far as that goes, but you could argue with the like ancestors, and that part is literally why I cannot identify as a Hebrew Israelite, because baby, my crystals have helped me through a lot. Like, I did not put all my faith in my crystals. Don't be sitting here trying to tell me I worship crystals. That's what I don't like. Like, how you worship crystals. And I pay respect to my ancestors, but I do not worship my ancestors neither. Like, here's my thing. We got white men on dollar bills who founded this country, but we're like slave masters. We put them on the dollar bill and we circulate that every single day. Is that not, and people worship money, like people will kill for money, like, is that not worshiping? Like, y'all are worshiping these white people's ancestors, like, in a way. Like, our country is literally built off of that. Like, you know what I mean? Don't get me, like, I feel like they were worshiping the wrong people who, like, spread evil. Don't get me wrong. But my ancestors, like, my family, baby, we wasn't no murder. We wasn't no unalivers. Like, you feel me? We wasn't no, we wasn't out here doing no R-wording people. And then we wasn't the ones out here spreading all of that. So I'm going to definitely pay homage to my ancestors. And like, I watched all the Whited Out videos. I watched Stephen Dorby. So then you start getting a geography kind of, right? So when you come in when you learn that, all right, they ran out of Jerusalem, right? They fled to Africa to hide, like into Africa, which is like, we all know Egypt and Africa. Like, I mean, they fled into Egypt to hide, and different parts of Africa and stuff like that. Like, they split up, migrated, if you will, and blended in with those communities, right?
And when you really look into it, you would notice that the 10 northern tribes, well, they call it the 10 northern tribes for a reason. The 10 tribes were in the northern half of Israel, and the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and a little bit of Shimon were on the southern side of Israel. So when you discuss going into exile, it would make sense that the Judeans would have direct access to going into Africa. And in fact, we see through historians like Josephus and other historical documents, even in the Tanakh, there were many different waves of Judeans actually going into Africa in different periods of time, over a 2,000-year period even, including in recent times from the Portuguese Inquisition.
Right.
So yeah, it is definitely interesting, as you said.
So some different communities look at you like, look at them like, you don't worship like us. We know you're an outsider. We know that you're not one of us. There were always wars, like, you know what I mean? No matter what ethnicity, what religion, what continent you were on, like, there was barbarians and stuff like that. Like, beef, they was all like the Grecians and the Romans and stuff was beefing. Like, all of them, like, their empires got overtook. The Han dynasty, the Qin dynasty, all of these different things fell and can't, like, you know what I mean? Everything has changed over time. Like, there's different dynasties that lasted longer than others and stuff. As far as like that goes, when they try to say Africans were selling other Africans, Africa is a big ass continent with a whole bunch of different, like, different belief systems and stuff. So yes, they were warring over there, and yes, they were taking each other captive and stuff like that. As far as history is said, the most brutal type of treatment has been from, like, you know, the Atlantic slave trade. The outsiders, those are the ones who was captured from, like, the coasts of Africa and stuff like that. They were the ones that fled from Jerusalem, like, the ones that were captives, like, stuff like that. Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't all Africans. Like, after a while, they just start, from, you know, history's account, they just start snatching anybody and stuff like that. But there were certain kingdoms who had like, you know, agreements and contracts and stuff with the Europeans and whatnot, and the Spaniards and all that. Hebrew Israelites teach that, like, you know, the tribes broke the 10 Commandments, and that's why they started basically being sold into slavery and were no longer protected by their God. And that, y'all, like, kind of causes confusion for me too, because if you went and made a covenant, only a certain group of people, not everybody around the world made this covenant, right? The rest of the people who didn't make the covenant, they call them Gentiles, right? Why are you forcing other people to make this, to be in this? Like, why are you forcing other people to believe how you believe? And they did not come and make this covenant. Like, you know what I mean? They didn't make this blood pact. That's another thing. Like, if it sounds like a blood pact to me, but I want to get into that in a different video. What pretty much, like, turned me off from, like, being a Hebrew Israelite was, you start learning more. Like, you start learning about, then you start wondering, like, how far back does society really go? How far back does the earth really go? What's the oldest civilization? What, like, cause the black, like, you know, the Jews weren't the oldest civilization. Like, you know what I mean? There was people before them. Like, the oldest known, I believe, is the Sumerians, I believe. You know, they're the ones that created, like, the emerald tablets and stuff like that. And they got their own version of, like, all these stories and stuff like that. This is what sent me down a rabbit hole, though, like, watching White It Out, watching Stephen Darby, because I started seeing stuff in that, and their logic, too, that didn't make sense to me. But I still believe in a lot of what they say, and I feel like a lot of it's still truth, like, you know what I mean? But I start having my own personal experiences, like,